Hello everybody, welcome to Naresh IT, and let's get back to one more session on verbal ability, and seems a very interesting and easy topic, that is articles. Now when it comes to articles, we all have learned grammar throughout our life, we have been learning English throughout our life, but the one question that comes to our mind is when to use a, when to use an, when to use the. So here I am going to make that confusion easier for you by discussing the rules of when to use a, an and the. So here let's get started. You know these are articles a and the. We use it in almost all our sentences and widely used. So what is a or an? A or an is an indefinite article. What do you mean by an indefinite article? When you're not sure about something. For example, it can be a marker, any marker, a pen, a book, a table. So when you're not sure about something, you call it an indefinite article. And the is a definite article. So what do you mean by definite? That means we are sure about the thing that we are talking about. Now when I said a marker, this is the first time I am talking about a marker. I use the indefinite article. But when I say the marker in my hand, I am being specific here, I am being sure, I know which marker I am talking about. So it's the marker which is there in my hand. So at that time we use the definite article the. Now when to use a, an and when to use the. So let's segregate that. First we will talk about when a and an is used. So here we use it for singular nouns or singular things. Now here when I say singular countable nouns, it means, now let me take an example of a marker. This is a marker. Usually a marker means one marker. I say I have a marker in my hand. Okay. Now in place of one marker, if I have two markers in my hand, so can I say I have a markers in my hand? No, that's not possible, because here it's not singular, markers is plural. So you see I have a marker in my hand. So you use a for singular. Same way, an apple. So here you know when I say I ate an apple for breakfast. So here I am talking and I am saying an apple because I think you all are familiar with the rule. When we have a word starting with vowels, the vowels are, so whenever a word is starting with a vowel and it has a vowel sound, we usually use an before it. So we say an apple. Now apple is singular and it is countable. So I say an apple. But if I make that apple as plural, if I say apples, now can I say an apple? No, that's not possible, because here apples is plural and we will not use an for plural nouns. So here the first rule that we define here is for indefinite articles to use a or an, we need the nouns in countable number and singular in nature. Let's move on to the next one. When do we use the definite article here? So here definite article can be used both for singular and plural countable nouns. So here I can say the apple. Is it possible? Yes, because now here apple is singular, I am saying the apple. The apple I ate in the morning. So here I am using the definite article the because I am talking about a specific apple. Which apple? The one I ate for breakfast. So it's the apple. Now if I change this apple into plural, so I make it apples. Can I say the apples? Yes, it's absolutely right. I can say the apples because the definite article is used both for singular and plural countable nouns. So here the apples is also right. The apples I bought yesterday. I am being specific. I am being definite about which apples? The ones which I bought yesterday. So I say the apples. Now here if you noticed, I said the apples and the apples, which is correct. Now if you don't have an idea, I will give you a very simple rule to identify that. Now the is pronounced in two different ways. You say the as well as the. When do you say the and when do you say the? A very simple example is, look at the word here. It's apples. It's starting with the letter A. A being a vowel from A, E, I, O, U. So if a word starts with a vowel or which has a vowel sound, then I can say the apples. Okay. The same case, I take another word, the pens. Now here, do I say the pens or the pens? The right way to say is the pens, because P is a consonant, and whenever a word starts with a consonant word at that consonant letter, at that time the is pronounced as the. But furthermore, if you still have confusion when to use the or the, I would say by default, if you are not able to identify that or not use it fluently, it's always better to stick to the format of using the before nouns and not pronounced it as the. So here, that is the pronunciation of the. Okay, then we'll move on to the next rule. Okay, here I have two sentences for you. I bought an apple, the apple was nice. Now here, why am I saying an apple, and in this sentence why am I starting with the apple? Now the basic rule that we follow here is, when we are talking about something for the first time, that is, the listener doesn't know what you are talking about, so that information is new for the listener and nobody knows about it, then you will use the indefinite article. Why? Because we are not sure. The article is not definite. So we say, I bought an apple. That means any apple. Now in the second sentence, when I say the apple, that means which apple am I talking about? I am talking about the apple that I bought. So here, the listener knows which apple I am talking about. It's not any other apple, but the one which I bought. So I say, the apple was nice. So it's not a new apple, but the one which I bought. So the rule is, when you talk about something for the first time, you use an or a depending on the noun. And when you're talking about the same thing for the second time, you use the or you pronounce the, it depends on the word, and this is the use of definite and indefinite article. Let's go on to the next rule. Usually, when you talk about having something, a or an usually means one of something. For example, if I say I have a pen, that means I have one pen. I have a car, I have one car. I have an aeroplane, which is not normally true because I don't think I can have an aeroplane. So I'll say, but I'll say an aeroplane because I'm saying I have one aeroplane. So it's like similar to saying one of something. So we say I have one of something. I have a pen, I have an aeroplane. So a and an refers to one thing. When we are talking about the meals of the day, now what are the different meals of the day that we have? Breakfast, lunch, dinner. Okay. So the rule that we apply here is, whenever we are talking about any of these meals, we would not use the definite article the, though it is a specific meal of the day. So here, I had my breakfast or lunch or dinner. Here, though all three being specific meals, so we know we are talking about a definite thing, but the rule that applies here is, you will not use any article before these nouns. When you are talking about musical instruments, so how many musical instruments can you play? Seriously, I cannot play any musical instrument. So if you are good at something, you can play the piano, you can play the guitar. So all these are specific musical instruments. So here there are two rules regarding that. So the two rules are, in the first sentence you see I have written I have a guitar. Now when I say a guitar, that means I am talking about I have one guitar, or I possess a guitar, I own a guitar. So I say a guitar. In the next sentence I say I play the guitar, because here when I say the guitar, I am talking about it as a musical instrument. So I say the guitar and not I can play a guitar. So this is the rule. When we are talking about musical instruments, possession, it's a, and when you are talking about actually playing it or using the instrument, it is the. Okay, let's move on to the next point. Now again we have specific rules which we need to implement here. Bank, post office, doctor. Let's take the first example, bank. In how many banks do you hold an account? Like, can you say 10 accounts, 20 accounts, or 20 banks, or just one? Probably one account. Okay, I hold my account in SBI. So if I have to go and deposit some money, what would I say? I have to go to bank or I have to go to the bank. Now here the rule is I will say the bank. Why? Because it's a specific bank, the bank in which I have an account. So I say the bank. and usually we all have an account in a specific bank. So we will say the bank here. Now post office, usually there will be one in a city or one in your area. So for example, if you have to go post a letter to your friend in another city. I am staying in Ameerpet, okay. I have a friend who stays in Delhi. So what do? Do I go to the post office which is in Ameerpet, or will I go to a post office which is in Abbots? Definitely I will go to the Ameerpet post office, right. So I say the post office because here I am talking about a specific post office. Next one is doctor. Nowadays we know we are falling sick, we have dengue and we have different kinds of fevers coming up. So what do? We usually go to the doctor, right. Now whom do we go to? Do we keep changing our doctors from time to time? No, we go to the same doctor. So here, keeping it specific, knowing which doctor, so I will say the doctor. I have to go to the doctor. I will not go to a new doctor, I will go to the same doctor. So I say the doctor. Now the next one is superlatives. What do you mean by superlatives? If you know your adjectives well, you will say it's the third degree of comparison. So whenever we are comparing one with everything else, so I say, for example, we say best. So which is the third form, which is the superlative form of good? So we say good, better, best. So when I say best, I say the best film in this category is this. So here one is being compared to all. So whenever we are talking about superlatives, we use the. And one more note here, when we are using the superlative degree of comparison, we usually pronounce the as the. So I say he is the best actor, he is the best teacher. So here we say the, though the word starts with a consonant, but you can pronounce the as the. Next one is, whenever you are talking about doing something in a day, in a week, in a year or any time, that means once in that particular time. So we say once a week, 3 times a day, ₹100 a kilo. So here a means per. The quantity that we are talking about or the number that we are talking about here is 1 or per. So we say once a week. For example, how many times do you watch a movie outside? So you say once a week. 3 times a day. Example for that is I have my meals 3 times a day. Then next is ₹100 a kilo. Can you think of anything that costs ₹100 a kilo? ₹100 for a kilo of pulses. Alright. Then that is for once of something. When we are talking about cinema and theatre, so here actually the rule is we will always use the before it. I say the cinema, the theatre. I am going to watch the cinema. I am going to go to the theatre to watch the cinema. So here it's the before these two words. The next one is on the list, radio, television. What article do we use for radio? Any idea? I think you all listen to dash radio. Do you listen to the radio? Yes. The article that we use for radio always is the. I listen to the radio every day. Television. Now, how many of us watch television these days? I think very few, because we all have mobiles in our hands, we all have laptops in our hands. So for television, we are not going to use the definite article the, but there is a rule which governs here. When we are talking it about as an equipment, we say, can you turn on the television? So you are talking about a specific television, so we say the television. But in a general sense, we will say, I watch the news on television. So here it is on television, not the television. But for radio, it's always the. But here the same thing, when you're talking about a possession, you say, I have a radio, that means I have one radio. I have a television, that means I have one television. Okay, now let's go on to the next rule. Okay, the next on the list is when we are talking about any sport. Now there are different sports that people play. For example, cricket, football, basketball. Now you'll think, okay, here I'm talking about a definite or a specific sport. So what should I use? So can I say I can play the cricket? No, that's a wrong way to say it, because when we're talking about names of sport, we will not use the definite article. You say I can play cricket, I can play football, I can play basketball. So no the before names of sports, even though they are definite or specific. Then the next one is when we are talking about specific things. Now here when we say specific things, that means I as a speaker, I know what I am talking about. You as a listener, you know what I am talking about. So if I say the light in this room, so that means I know which light I am talking about. There is only one light in the room and you know which light I am talking about. So if I ask you to switch off the light, then you will go and switch off the only light in the room. Then I say the light. Same way, we have only one fan in a room. So can you switch off the fan or can you switch on the fan? So I am talking about a definite fan. Now here there is some carving on the ceiling. Now I know which ceiling I am talking about. You know which ceiling I am talking about. So when we are talking about specific things which the speaker as well as the listener knows, then we use the definite article the before it. Next is noun plus number. Now here again there is a confusion. We think, okay, we already know this is definite, this is specific, so why shouldn't we say the platform 6 or the room 125? But the specific rule here is whenever we are talking about noun plus number. So here this is the noun and this is the number. So here we will not use an article. Now if I say the train arrives on, I will not say the platform 6, I will say the train arrives on platform 6. So no article for noun plus number. I am going to room 125. So here again not the room 25 but room 125. Same way when we are using same, top, bottom, last or next of something, we use the definite article the. For example, I have the same or I am wearing the same pullover as you. Now here it means the before same. Now here my room is on the top floor. So here I use the. So it's at the bottom the. Then the last train to Mumbai leaves at 9. So the next train to Mumbai leaves at 9. So here it would be the before all these words. Next is when you have unique things or only one of something. So we say sky, sea, ground, country, environment, all these words we use the. So we say the sky is clear today. So I can swim in the sea. The ground is wet. I live in the country. The environment is polluted. So for all these words I use the. So this is the definite rule. We always use the before this. When we are talking about space, we have two rules. When we are talking about space in the universe and the space available. So for example, if I say there is no space on the board or the space on the board is limited. So here I am talking about the availability, I say the space. Now when I am talking about space in the universe, then I say there are millions of stars in the space. So here stars in space, sorry, I would not say the space. So when I am talking about space in the universe, no article, but the availability of space somewhere else, I will say the space. Okay, the next on the list is when we are talking about one and only. We know there is one sun, one moon, one earth, one equator. So here we will use the definite article the before it. You say I can see the sun, the moon comes out in the night. I live on the earth. Now here why did I say the earth? Because here it starts with an E which is a vowel. So I say the earth. The equator is an imaginary line which runs in the middle of the map. Okay. So here the next one is when we are talking about end or beginning of something, we use the before it. So you say the end of this month I am going to go on a holiday. So here the end. The beginning of the next month I would start work. So here I use the before it. Now when I am talking about school, college, university, hospital, prison, religious place, there are two rules that define this. Now here be very clear. Here when you are a part of this, okay, and when you go to these places for the actual usage or why it is used for, then we do not use an article. But when we go for another reason and when we are not a part of these institutions, then we use the. I will give you an example here. Now, do you think I go to school? No. Do I study at school? No. I have finished my schooling. So I say I have to go to school to meet my child's teacher. So here that means I am not a part of school. I am not a teacher at school. I am not a principal. I am not a student at school, but I am going to school as a parent, right. So here I would say I am going to the school because I am not a part of it. But here my daughter is studying in school. So I'll say now what is she doing now? So the time is say 3 o'clock, she is still at school. So I'll say she is at school. Why? Because she is a student there, she is studying there. So if we talk about people who are a part of this institution and they are working as anything or as part as a pupil, then we say without the article. But for me, I am not a part of school, I am only going there to visit the teacher, so I say I am going to the school. The same rule applies for college, university. Like for example, I say I am going to the college to meet my daughter's faculty. I am not a part of college, but I say my daughter is going to college tomorrow. That means she is a student there, so it's college without the. Same way, university. I have to go to the university to collect my documents or to collect my certificates. I am not going there as a student, but I finished everything from the university. So I say the university. So the faculty is at university. Why? Because they are working there as a faculty. So we say university. Then the next one, hospital. Now this is very simple. I have to go to the hospital. Okay. Now here to meet my friend. Alright, or to see my friend. Now am I a patient at the hospital? No. Am I going there as a visitor? Yes. Who's there in the hospital? My friend. So here when I am going there as a visitor, I say I am going to the hospital. But if I am talking about my friend, I say my friend is in hospital. Why? Because she is a patient there. She is undergoing treatment. So again here the rule applies is when you are talking about the doctor, the nurse, the other people working at the hospital, we say they are at hospital, or the patients at hospital. But other people going there for another reason, but not for why you should be in the hospital, then you say I am at the hospital or I am going to the hospital to see my mother, to see my friend. Next, same as prison, or you can say jail. So here he is, for example, we take Mr. X. Mr. X is in prison because he committed a crime. Now because he committed a crime, he is a prisoner. Okay, so we say he is in prison. Now Mr. X's family wants to go and see him in the prison. So we say Mr. X's family visited him in the prison. Now did Mr. X's family commit a crime? No, they didn't. So why are they there in the prison? They went there as visitors to see Mr. X. So if you are a part of it as a prisoner or as a jailer there, then you say okay, he is the jailer in prison. But here if you are not a part, then you say the prison. Same goes for religious places. Now I know we all are religious minded, we go to the temple, we go to the church, we go to the mosque from time to time. Now if we go to these places for its actual reason, now why do we all go? To pray, okay, to ask something from God. So here if I say I am going to a temple, that would be right, I would not use an article there, okay. But if I use the there, that means I am not a part of it, I am going there for another reason. So I say for example, there is some repair work going on in the temple. So I say some workers went to the temple to repair the roof. Now did the workers go there to actually pray? No, they did not. They actually went to repair the roof. So they didn't go for its actual purpose, but they went for another purpose. So we'll say the workers went to the temple. But if I am going there to pray, then I'll say I went to temple today. So when you're going there for the actual reason, no article. You're going there for any other reason, then you use the there. Let's move on to the next point. Now this is very simple, but you need to understand the rule here. All the abbreviations starting with these alphabets, L, M, N, F, R, S, X. If you notice in these alphabets, though all these are consonants, but they have a vowel sound. So you say when you say L, you're saying kind of EL, M, EM, EN. So here you are having a vowel sound for all these alphabets. So the rule is when you're talking about, for example, you have LLB, okay. So I'll say in a general sense, I'll say he is an LLB, then I'll say an. He is an MP, he is an NRI, he is an FRRO, he is an RTC driver, he is an SI, it is an X-ray. Okay. So for all these I'm using an, because here I'm talking about the general sense or in just a random way, because all these are starting with these letters. But here now if these become specific, okay, now I know he is an LLB, but I want to talk about a specific LLB. So I say he is the LLB from Kanpur, okay, he is the MP from Hyderabad. So when I'm making this specific, or if I know which person I'm talking about, then instead of an you use the. Otherwise in a general sense it's always an. Let's go on to the next point, religious books. We all read religious books, we have different religious books, we have the Bible, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. So for all religious books or important documents or important books, we usually use the before it. So we will not say I am reading Quran, I will say I am reading the Quran. So I am reading the Bhagavad Gita. So it's the for all religious books. Okay. So let's go on to the next point now. Okay. The next on the list is when you're talking about different types of animals, machines, inventions or currencies. So here when you're talking about animals, for example, if I say, now what do I use before giraffe? Now I'll say the giraffe. Now why do I say the giraffe? I'm not talking about a specific giraffe, but I'm talking about giraffe as a specific animal amongst all animals. Now for example, if I say the giraffe is the tallest animal, so that means there are other animals which are tall, but amongst those giraffe is the tallest. So I see the giraffe here. Now here for example, if I'm talking about a machine, okay, I can ride the bicycle. So here I'm talking about it like that means not just one, I can ride all bicycles. Now here invention, when we are talking about any invention, the telephone was invented by so and so, the telescope was invented by so and so. So for any invention we usually use the because it's one and only. Currencies, the currency of India is, anybody knows? I think you all know, it's the rupee. Now the currency of America, what is it? It's the dollar. So when we are talking about currencies, we usually use the before it. Next one, when we are using adjectives to define people on the whole. Now here rich, poor, old, young, injured, sick. These are the examples that I have taken. So here generally what happens is when you are talking about a person as a single person, okay, he is a rich man. So I'm just talking about one person here. Okay. Now if I want to refer this rich to all people who are rich, then I would say the rich should pay more taxes. Do you think the rich should pay more taxes? I don't think so, they are already paying huge taxes. Okay. So here if it's on the whole for the entire group that you are using or the entire community that you are using, then we use the. But if you are using for an individual person, then we use a. For example, now I say a poor man. Now here if I want to use it as a community, then I say the poor needs to be taken care of. Okay. Then old, he is an old man. It is the government has made many plans for the old. Now here all old people. Young, he is a young man. Okay, this competition is only available for the young, that means all people who are young. Next is injured. He was injured in an accident. The injured were taken to hospital, that means all people who were injured. So sick, he fell sick. All the sick people need to be treated at the hospital. So here we are talking about all and specific. Next is nationalities. When we have nationalities, we have different rules here. So here when a nationality ends in CH or SH, the example is French. So when I'm talking about all the people of France, so we call the French. Okay. Now here if I'm talking about a single person, okay, or a single French man or a French woman. So singular it is a French man or a French woman, but for plural it is the French. Same way when we are talking about a word which is ending with SH, that is Spanish. So we say a Spanish man or a Spanish woman, that's for singular. But when we are talking about all the people of Spain, we say the Spanish and with the article the. Use a nationality that is ending with ESE. Do you have anything in your mind? Our closest neighbor. So it is Chinese, right? So here now the rule is if it's a singular or a plural. We say a Chinese, so that's singular, or the Chinese for plural. So you can say a as well as the. A would mean singular and the would be, the Chinese mean all people from China. A Chinese means one Chinese person or a Chinese man or a Chinese woman. But here we will not say a Chinese man or a woman, we will say a Chinese. Okay. The next one is a nationality ending with ES. Do you have any idea? And I'll give you an example. Here it is. Okay. Indian and Indians. So when we are talking about one Indian, okay, so I say I am an Indian, alright. Now here when we are talking about Indians, all Indians, so we say Indians, we will not say the Indians, okay. So this is the rule for nationalities. Well, we have a few more left on the list. So here we are talking about continents. Now you all know there are 7 continents in this world, okay. So can you name a few? Okay, I'll do that for you. We talk about Asia, Africa, Australia, North America, South America, Europe and Antarctica. All these are your continents. So here the rule is for continents, though they are specific, we will not use the. So I will not say I live in the Asia, I will say I live in Asia, not the. Now when you are talking about islands, there are 2 rules regarding this. One is an individual island and one is a groups of islands. So whenever we are talking about an individual island, we will not use the definite article the. So we say Bermuda or we say Tasmania or Sicily. All these are individual islands, okay. So we will say Bermuda, Tasmania or Sicily without the. But when we are talking about groups of islands, we usually use the before it. So we say in the Indian subcontinent, do you know the 2 islands that we have? One is the Lakshadweep and the other is the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So we say the or the before groups of islands. The other islands are, for example, the Seychelles. Then this is for the groups of islands, we use the. When you are usually talking about cities, towns and countries, we do not use the. So for example, if I talk about the city Hyderabad, I say I live in Hyderabad, okay. Now here you will not use the before these names, or you say I live in Bangkok, I live in Thailand. So here you are not going to use the. Names of oceans, rivers, seas, canals. Now for all these you always use the before it. Now you say, for example, for oceans you say the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, right, the Arctic Ocean. For rivers we say there are two ways to say for rivers. So we say the Nile, which is the longest river in the world, or we can talk about the river Nile. So whichever way you want to say, with the name river or without the name river, for all rivers it will be the. Now the most common river that we have in India is the Ganga. So I can say the Ganga or the river Ganga. Now when we are talking about seas, so here we talk about the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea, the Black Sea, it's the before it. When we are talking about the canals, we usually use the before it. So we see the Suez Canal, the Panama Canal, so the before it. Next one is mountains, group of mountains. The same rule applies how we used for island and groups of islands. So when we are talking about an individual mountain here, so we will not use the before it. So for example, the highest mountain is, say for example, Mount Everest. So we will not say the Mount Everest, we will say Mount Everest or it's Everest. Now here when we are talking about groups of mountains, then we use the before it. Now the group of mountains that we know are, we can say the Himalayas, alright, the Andes, the Rockies, all these are groups of mountains. So here we will talk about the for groups and for individual we will not use the. Next one is when we are talking about people. So we have very common surnames in the north as well as in the south. So in the north we have common the Sharmas, the Guptas, the Kapoors. So when we are talking about the family name, we usually use the before it. Now in the south the common ones are the Reddys, the Raos, right? These are the ones that I know. So we say the before it. So when you're talking about groups or family names, or we're talking about the surname, we use the before it. Next is when we have names with republic, kingdom, states, we usually use the before it. So if you think about a name which starts with republic, you say the Czech Republic, the Dominican Republic, we use the. When we are talking about kingdoms, we say the United Kingdom, and when we are talking about states, we say the United States. Okay. Then when we are using Mr., Mrs., Doctor plus a name or noun, name of a person. Now you already know for doctor, we say a specific doctor. We say I am going to the doctor, right? Now here when you are talking about this, Mr., for example, let's take a name John, Mr. John, all right, Mrs. Jonathan, and then Dr. John or Dr. Jonathan. So when we are having these names plus the name here, we will not use the before it. Well, the next on the list is when you're talking about names of companies. Let's take a very common name and very famous name, Naresh IT. Can we say the Naresh IT? No. Though it's a specific name, it's a definite name, we will not use the. So we'll say Naresh IT, not the Naresh IT. For example, other big IT companies, we say Infosys, IBM. We'll not say the Infosys or the IBM. It's always without the definite article the. Next is when you're talking about historical buildings, unique art and architecture. So any historical building that's very famous in India, we can talk about the Taj Mahal. So we use the before it. Now famous art and architecture, you can talk about any paintings. We say the Mona Lisa. So again, it's a famous art. So we say the before it. Now other historical buildings that we can talk about outside India, we can say the Eiffel Tower. So again, it's the. Names of streets. Usually we do not use the before names of streets. So we'll say like say James Street, alright, Baker Street. All these are without the and not with the. When we are talking about directions, we all know the 4 directions: north, south, west, east. So when you are going towards a direction, I am going to the north, to the south, the west, the east, we usually use the. But there is a rule regarding the. So for example, now here if you look at the first one, I have northeast, I write it as it is, I don't change the form here. So I say I live in the northeast. Now here in the second sentence, if you see, I say northeastern India. So here north as it is, but I am changing the form for east, I am making it eastern. So whenever you are changing a form for a particular place, then you will not use the there. So it will be as it is in the base form, you will use the northeast, or you will say northeastern India and not the northeastern India. The same rule if I say eastern India. Now I will not say the eastern India, I will say eastern India without the. If I want to say East India, then at that time I will say the east of India. It usually means the east of India. Okay. Now these are the rules that we have been I've been able to make you understand. I hope it's quite clear to you, because there are quite a few rules for articles, but we will not be discussing all those rules. Here we've been able to discuss the most important ones, which will actually help you to solve the verbal ability section whenever you attend for interviews or when you have the written test. And believe me, if you really go through these rules and get into practice, then this will again be an easier section for you. And thank you.